Thanks everyone for being here. So this is a talk about Scala CLI, which is I think kind of a new tool in the Scala tooling landscape. And it's a tool so that allows you to do Scala without using a build tool. So as such, I mean, it kind of opens up new ways of doing Scala, so that even if you are quite attached to one of today's build tools, you might still find Scala CLI interesting. So, so who am I? I'm Alex Archambault, so Chloe introduced me a little bit. I've been doing Scala for a few years, first in ad tech. Then I worked 100% in open source Scala, and more specifically on tooling. And more recently, I've worked on Scala CLI at Virtus Lab. So before we dive a bit deeper in what is Scala CLI, I just wanted to quickly mention pronunciation of Scala CLI. So I'm going to pronounce it Scala CLI, which I think is how native English speakers are pronouncing it. Yet you might hear it pronounced Scala CLI. So why Scala CLI? If you read CLI in French and as a word rather than as an acronym, you are going to pronounce it CLI. So I have to say I don't have anything to do with this, but some people pronounce it Scala CLI, so don't be surprised. Yeah, I'm going to pronounce it Scala CLI, but Scala CLI is the same thing. So why did we write a new tool to do Scala? I think it comes down to the general direction we want Scala to go into. So a few years ago when Scala became popular, it was seen as a better Java. It was kind of a Java with a more lightweight syntax and closures, say. And I think around the same time, some people were seeing Scala more as a better Haskell, and they were pushing for more advanced features in the Scala type system. That's, when we heard about the famous Haskalator, people were joking about this at the time. And more recently, some voices started to be heard advocating for Scala as a better Python. And that's the case of Li Haoyi in particular, who wrote some time ago a blog post titled The Death of Hype, What's Next for Scala. And in this post, he advocates for Scala as a general purpose programming language. And general purpose programming language good at some use cases that Python is also good at. So in the post, he mentions data analytics, machine learning, or web development in particular. So in this talk, so if you want to make Scala better Python, I'm not going to discuss the syntax or the semantics of the language. I think in my opinion, they are simple enough already for beginners. So in my opinion, if we want to make Scala a better Python, the idea of a better Python is to somehow make Scala more accessible to beginners. And I think in the way of this, the main hurdle, the main barrier has more to see with tooling, in my opinion. So for example, in Python, if you want to run a piece of code, it's very straightforward. You can just do Python file. In Scala, it's a quite different story. So unless you are running a very, very trivial code, you usually have to run Scala using a build tool, and which means very often SVT. And so to run Scala code, you have to get familiar with your build tool, then you have to configure your build tool, which means with SBT writing a build.sbt file, and then at last you can run your code with a command like sbt run. So it doesn't make for, in my opinion, for a very good first experience with Scala. But it's not the only reason it's not the only motivation to write Scala CLI. I think beyond Python, another motivation is scripting. So this 14 years old blog post by Martin Odersky. Martin Odersky mentions, he talks about Scala as a language for small scripts up to large systems. And I think in the past years, Scala has been used quite heavily to build large systems, to build heavy backends. But we think less of Scala as a language for scripting. Yet, if you think of it, if you look at the syntax of Scala, it feels like quite a good fit for scripting. And yet here too, in my opinion, the hurdle is tooling. So you wouldn't want to, if you have a script, you just want to run your script and not configure a build tool in order to run your script. That somehow negates the benefit of scripting. And so here, so that's one of the motivations to write Scala CLI. And here you might say, but what about Ammonite, which is this kind of project to run scripts? And I'm going to discuss Ammonite in a few minutes in more details. So when we started to discuss Scala CLI with people in the Scala community, one question that we often got was, and one remark we often got was something along those lines. So why didn't just you use or refactor this or this project? So it was usually different people advocating for different tools. And so one thing to notice here is we can't make everyone happy about this. So if we were to pick one of these tools, people advocating for the other tools wouldn't necessarily be unhappy about it. But beyond that, so we wrote Scala CLI from scratch, and we ended up with something radically different than any of these tools, both from a user experience perspective and looking at the internals of Scala CLI. So that kind of shows that we made the right choice. I mean, retrofitting all those features into any of these tools would have been quite a daunting task, I think. Yet we can look at, among those tools, Ammonite is probably the closest to Scala CLI. So let's have a closer look at it. So there are several reasons we didn't use Ammonite as a starting point for Scala CLI. And one of them is that Ammonite actually, Scala CLI has many more features than Ammonite. So it supports Scala native, Scala.JS, it has support for incremental compilation, it supports several Scala versions at the same time. In Ammonite, if you want to switch Scala version, you have to download a new Ammonite launcher. You don't have to do this with Scala CLI. So there are actually many features. Scala CLI has many more features than Ammonite. And I think it would have been, we could have added some of those features individually in Ammonite, but adding all of them would have really really overhauled the Ammonite codebase to the point that it wouldn't be Ammonite anymore. It would have also have changed the UX of Ammonite quite a bit. So that overall, it was probably a better choice and faster to just start from scratch. So, who who wrote Scala CLI. So it's a 100% VirtuSlab funded effort. Yet there have been many discussions with Scala Center and LAMP. And also, Scala CLI actually builds a lot on past Scala Center funded efforts. So Scala CLI uses Loop a lot, which was written by the Scala Center. It relies a lot on features from courses setup, which was funded by the Scala Center. And it's going to use quite a bit features that were developed for the AMLAT support in Metals. So now Metals has support for AMLAT scripts, and many things needed to be tweaked in Metals for that to work, for scripts to work properly in Metals through BSP. And Scala CLI is going to benefit from this. And yet, so Scala CLI was open sourced, I think it last September or October. So it's an open source project. So many people can contribute and do contribute. So it's not anymore 100% VirtuSlab effort. And people are contributing through GitHub, through issues on GitHub, or simply discussing on Discord. So let's have a closer look at Scala CLI. And in order to run Scala CLI, you need to install it. And we offer many ways to install Scala CLI. We try to make as many people happy here. So we support many OS-specific options like Debian, apt, RPM. We support Brew on Mac. We have graphical installers on Windows. And we also have scripts, so standalone scripts to run Scala CLI. So you just put the script, any of the scripts in your repository, and it will automatically download and run Scala CLI. You can also use Crochet to install Scala CLI. You can use SDKN. You can give it a try in Docker. And lastly, you can install it manually using curl and gzip. So in this talk, I wanted to, so I have a fresh machine here, and initially I wanted to, I wanted to install Scala CLI using one of these methods on this machine. So apt is installed. Yet, while preparing this demo, I found many things that I wanted to adjust. It's mostly aesthetic changes, but also I'm going to show you some really cutting edge features of Scala CLI, which are not in the latest release. So I'm going to use a development version of Scala CLI. So here, namely, it's a snapshot of the next release. So I'm going to show you to demo. I'm going to write a small application and a micro library to show you what Scala CLI can do. So a few days ago, I asked for ideas for what kind of micro library or application I could do, and I had a few propositions, such as some people proposed to write a date handling library from scratch during the course of a 45-minute talk. So why not? People proposed to write an XML parser or a YAML parser, but we don't have that much time. So actually, I'm going to write an application to print something like this. So we're going to write a CLI making an ASCII code such as this one, tell a message. So yeah, there are already tools to print such stuff, but we are going to write a Scala version of this. Okay, So here I'm going to set up things in a very specific order. So I'm going to create a directory for this project. I'm going to create an empty file to start. And I'm going to try to compile that file with Scala CLI. To compile things, we have compile subcommand in Scala CLI. Let's run it. And what is interesting here is, so I'm running Scala CLI for the first time on this machine, which means many things happen, and we can have a quick look at them so that you can understand how Scala CLI works. So what happens here is Scala CLI first downloads JVM. So here it downloads Temurin 17, so it's Java 17. Then Scala CLI relies on a bloop. So we check that bloop is running, and it's not running, so we need to start it. But in order to start it, we need to download it. So we download bloop. And once bloop has started, we need to pick a Scala version. So we download a few Scala version listings here. And once we picked a Scala version, here we picked Scala 3.11, we need to download Scala 3.11 just. And lastly, we download a few dependencies. So the one dependency here is Scala library, I think. And the internal dependency is, I don't remember exactly, but it doesn't matter that much. It's an internal dependency of Scala CLI. Once we've done this, Scala CLI actually writes a few files in this directory. And then it connects to Bloop and asks Bloop to compile this project. So there's only an empty file to compile. So that's, it goes very fast. So, but one important thing to notice when we run Scala CLI once is it writes this directory. It writes a file in .bsp, which is going to allow metals to find Scala CLI and use it to know about the project. So let's fire metals. Okay. I'm running VS Code. So sorry, I need to adjust a few things to share my VS Code screen. Can't find it. Sorry. And okay, I found it. It's here. And you should see VS Code here. All right. So I enabled metals. I had already enabled metals in this VS Code session. So metals, we saw metals starting, then indexing. So we can now open that empty file and start coding. So here I'm going to edit things in VS Code and run Scala CLI at the same time. So I'm going to try to run that project. It means I can use the run command, but it's the default command. So you can just not specify a command. So I'm going to run the current directory in watch mode. And of course, there's a main class. So let's define one. So I'm going to write some Scala 2 and Scala 3 compatible code. So I'm going to use the classic main class here. This way, and just to test, let's print something like this. And it should print hello, yeah, dropped. So now, so we wanted to print a cow saying stuff. So let me copy cow, put it here. Alright, so let's try to print this. And it prints a cow, that's cool. And now let's try to get the message from the arguments. So we're going to look at args. If there are arguments, let's use that message here. And if there's one argument, this is it. Honestly, in all other cases, just print an error message. This. Exit. So here we have issues both in VS Code and CLI because of the backslash that doesn't that the string interpreter doesn't like. So let's split this way. Right, and it still works. Now let's pass a custom message to this to see if it works. So we can pass arguments. That's weird. We can pass arguments after a double dash here. It seems to work, but here we have we need to adjust the top and bottom bars here. So let's quickly do this. The length of the message. The top bar is going to be this repeated len plus 2 times some margins. We'll have a bottom bar, which is going to be this repeated. And it should work better, yes. Alright, so so now we run this on the JVM. But the nice thing with Scala CLI is you can generate, and you can use Scala Native or Scala.JS. And it's just a matter of using a command line option. So yeah, let's give it a try. Let's give a try to Scala Native. So I'm passing this option and let's see if it works. It needs to download a few more things. Scala Native does its thing here. And it works. So for Scala Native and Scala.JS. So let's give it a try. Download a few more things. And we get an error here. So what is this error? We get referring in a non-existent method, system.exit from sys.exit here, which means this call is not supported on Scala CLI or Scala.JS. But the good thing is, it's an issue I had in one of my projects. So I'm going to add a dependency to work around that issue. So adding a dependency in Scala CLI is as easy as adding that kind of command. And I'm going to use my KZAP project. Coordinates are this. And here I'm using 2 times double colons here because it's first one is because it's a Scala dependency. The second one is it's because it's a Scala.js. It's also Scala.js or Scala native dependency. I'm going to use this version. So, and we get an error here. It we should get in the console too, yeah, right. And it says ksub _3 is not found. That's because ksub doesn't support Scala 3, so let's switch to Scala 2. So we can specify Scala version this way, plus n Scala 2, say. And right, it seems to work. Methods is indexing. See. Now let's try to use the helper in my project. So it's, I think it's platform util, yeah, dot exit. And this call should also work on Scala.js. So let's see. Yeah, it works. Except we are passing an argument here, and it's not picked here. And here too, there are, it's a Scala.js limitation, I think, but there are workarounds. I'm going to do this. And it should give me the arguments also on Scala.js. Let's see. Yeah, it works. Alright, so Scala CLI works on JVM, on Scala.js, and Scala native. We saw how to add dependencies, how to switch Scala version. Now, let's try to make a library out of this and give it a try and try to run it in the REPL, say. So I'm going to factor the code generating the message here. So take this, make a method for this, sending a string. And now let's turn this. Right. So I believe we need to pass an argument here. And it works. Yeah. So let's fire up a REPL and see if we can use this from a REPL. So to fire up REPL, Scala CLI has a REPL command, and we want a REPL for the current project. So we added that, and we should be able to use this method here. Yeah, it works. So yeah, Scala CLI gives us a REPL to experiment with the code we have. But now we want to write a library for this, so let's maybe add tests for it. So to add tests in Scala CLI, we can add files in a test directory. So here, I'm going to add a test suite, such as this one. If it's a test in a test directory, Scala CLI will assume it's a test. And in order to run tests, we need to add a test framework. So let's add one. We need to use munit, which coordinates are this. So 0729, I think. Let's run tests in watch mode at the same time using the test command. Right, so then the test to run, and now let's define the test suite with munit.define. So here, methods already picked the munit dependency, so we can use it straight away. We have a completion for munit. Let's define a simple test. So we want to test this method, and we are going to compare it to, we have a hello here, yeah. Let's copy this. So it is not the case here. And let's check that we get the value we expect. It seems to work. And just something to check here. Yep, it works. All right. So of course we can run tests for Scala.JS and Scala native. So we can do this. We can do the same for native. And now that we have a library, ideally we'd like to publish our library for several Scala versions and platforms. So we are going to cross-compile it. So let's specify in the configuration here all the Scala versions and all the platforms we support. So we are going to support Scala 2.13.8 and 2.12.15. And we are going to support platform JVM, Scala.JS, and Scala native. I'm going to save here. And still running the native tests. But what we can do, as we put in the configuration all the Scala versions and platforms we support, we can run all the tests at the same time with the -- cross option here. So we have a 2x3 matrix, so it's going to compile and run 6 test suites. First time it compiles Scala to 12 on this machine, so it takes a bit more time. But it's gonna work. And it's gonna run the 6 test suites here. Alright, yeah, going to let it finish. Three test suites, 3 more, 1 more. So yeah, before publishing this as a library, we still have a main method in it. So what we can do is could package that application as launchers that users can run. So for that, Scala CLI has a package command like this. And so we're going to write things in this file there. Okay, so right, so here it's for the JVM. So I generated a tiny jar, such as this. Let's try to run it, and it's not going to work because both Scala CLI and methods use their own JVMs. So we need to install Java on this machine. So I'm going to use a cursor to do that. Let's use the same JVM as Scala CLI. Alright, we have Java and we should be able to run this. Yep. So we can package JVM things, but we can also package Scala.JS things. Just generates a .js JavaScript file. And JavaScript files are run using Node. So same thing here. Alright. And we can do the same with Scala native. So it takes a tiny bit more time to generate a launcher. And we can run this. So this is a native executable. Alright. it works. So so we package this as an application, but now let's try to publish it as a library. So this is where I'm showing you a command that is not yet in the latest release of Scala CLI. So Scala CLI should have the next major release, I think, publish command, such as this one. And let's try to publish all modules here. So we are missing some configuration, but let's see what it says. Alright, so we need to add a repository, so we can use this directive here. And I didn't want to upload my Sonata credentials to this machine, so I'm going to publish things in a local directory first time. So let's say, let's call it repository, and we need to specify a few more parameters, like an organization. I'm going to use my organization. We need a name for this, and we can specify version 2. So let's use this version. And now let's try again to publish this. So it says it wrote 36 files. So it should be here. It should be generated just the data for all those modules. Let's have a look at one. So right now it's only standard jars and PAM files. So we don't have, I'm not sure why. So we don't support JavaDoc yet, and source jars should have been there. It's a new feature, so I'm not sure why they're missing. But yeah, the idea is we should very soon, Scala CLI should very soon allow you to publish small projects to Maven Central, say, which should in turn allow you to manage micro libraries entirely with Scala CLI. So right, so yeah, and we have many more ideas for the publish command, like we'd like to have some kind of wizard to allow you to just specify all the configuration you need to publish. We'd like to help you maybe manage GPG keys if ever you don't want to. We'd like to help with uploading secrets to GitHub and maybe even generate a GitHub workflow for you. So in a word, we'd like to automate as much as possible the steps that SVT-CI release describes. And I we believe that with this, it should really lower a lot the barrier to publishing micro libraries in Scala. So in a way, you should only need to have a Sonotype account, and then with just this, Scala CLI should allow you to set up GitHub Actions, publishing on GitHub Actions to publish your library. So we saw many features of Scala CLI. So what is Scala CLI good for so I think it's very good for experimenting. If you want to try out a new library, say, you can very quickly add a dependency in a Scala file. You can have it picked by methods and the CLI straight away, basically. And you can explore from your IDE and from the console. It's Scala CLI is very handy to reproduce issues too. So it's quite easy to put in a file, the Scala version you want to use, the exact dependencies you want to use, and to describe a bug. So you can have all of this in a single file that you can share with project maintainers. So it's really handy to share bugs or issues. So Scala CLI should be good for scripting, in particular to script JVM things, but also to script using Scala native. And lastly, as soon as the publish command is there, Scala CLI should be really a good choice to manage micro libraries. And more generally, Scala CLI, if you have a single module project and you don't need the task system of SBT or MIL, Scala CLI should be able to manage your project. But I'm going to skip this. And lastly, a question that often comes up is what happens if my project grows and now I want to switch to SBT or MIL because you want to have several modules, for example. And so Scala CLI has an export command for that takes a Scala CLI project and converts it to a MIL or SBT project. Yet, I think it's not perfect. I'm not sure how cross-compiling works in it, but we just have to implement this. But it's not the only problem, because when you go from Scala CLI to MIL or SBT, you are going to miss some Scala CLI features, like packaging is specific to the packaging we have in Scala CLI is specific to it. So you are going to miss this in MIL or SBT. But there also might be subtle differences in the other features, like publishing might be handled slightly differently in Scala CLI and in MIL or SBT, which means you might run into subtle bugs. The same actually for even the interfacing with Scala C. We use Loop. MIL or SBT have their own code to interface with Scala C. And there might be subtle differences between them. And also, if ever you want to go back to go from a MIL or SBT project to Scala CLI, you have to do it manually. So it's not automated either. So for all those reasons, I think we have some ideas to make the mismatch between Scala CLI and MIL less of a problem, but today there's still a kind of a gap between Scala CLI and MIL and SBT. And a last question that we often get is we added quite a few commands in Scala CLI. So we did publish recently, and we are adding publish. We're in the midst of it. But we also added like a meta browse command that I didn't show that opens up a tab in your browser and allows you to browse your sources and the sources of your dependencies. And basically the philosophy we followed till now is anything that has this UX here. So anything that can be a subcommand and accepts Scala files and makes sense for Scala development. Anything like this can be added to Scala CLI. So it might be a bit too broad or too large of a scope. So, and apart from that, and related to that is we want Scala CLI to become the official Scala command. Now we call it as Scala-CLI. We like it to become just Scala. And for that, so we are thinking about maybe we're thinking about how keeping the Scala CLI command alongside the Scala command. And basically, the Scala command would be a stripped down version of Scala.CLI. Scala would have only the core and the most stable commands, while Scala CLI would have all the other ones. Yeah, in order to become the official Scala command, we are going to this should go through a SIP process, the Scala improvement proposal. So watch the Scala contributors forum for it. And so that contributors post should allow you to discuss all this. So what commands should we include in the official Scala command? So don't hesitate to chip in that discussion when it will be opened. All right, so that's all for this talk. This is the Scala CLI website. We have a channel on the official Scala Discord. Don't hesitate to join, to ask questions there. There are many people beyond myself answering questions here. Yeah, so that's it.